Checking Mike.
Checking
check.
Robbie.
Here we go. It is May 24th,
Post Chattanooga.
2022. Welcome aboard, everybody. This is the Crushing Iron podcast, and this is episode 584.
Yep, had to write it down.
At 584. Hope you had an outstanding weekend. Getting ready for a nice, smooth end of May week, heading in the Memorial Day weekend. Hope you got a lot of fun things planned and had an amazing weekend. We did. We had an awesome time at the Chattanooga 70.3 Expo here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, as we wrap up our final week here.
Yeah.
And then we head out. Going out. We got to meet a lot of awesome people this last week, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But if it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. You know, you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general, and that your time is valuable. So we appreciate you tuning in today. We'll cover it all. We'll do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We'll do race recaps. We'll also do race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through, what our athletes are going through. We work with a wide range of athletes across the globe, from beginner level athletes looking to do a first sprint and or just triathlon in general, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to Kona, and everyone in between, and from all over the globe. Majority here in the U.S., but quite a few across the pond. Cheers, mate. But yeah, like we said, most of them here in the U.S. And oftentimes we'll use the conversations with them, the feedback, training peaks, comments, and everything else to drive the topic of the day. We'll also hop into our lively and entertaining Facebook group, Crushing Iron group. If you want to answer one simple question, we'll let you write in. And when I mean answer it, we don't just mean like yes or nothing. We mean just like, give us a little bit of feedback, and we'll let you into a great community. A lot of awesome people in there. Again, very experienced people willing to lend a hand and share their experience and answers to help you navigate through what can oftentimes be a very complicated and confusing triathlon journey. We'll also go in there sometimes and do a Q&A and let that drive the topic of the discussion that we have. But that's it. We don't do sponsors. We definitely don't do ads, but we do have an agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah, we do. You said across the pond. I just want to give a quick shout out to Colin, who is waiting for gear. Well,
he's way across the pond, huh?
Yeah, he's in Ireland, and I sent a package to him, and then I tracked it and had like 50 stops along the way. It went all the way to Ireland, and then it came back, and then they said it delivered back to the hub like earlier this month. And we can't find it, so buddy, I'm working on your next shipment here.
Working on another one.
Hang in there.
Hang tight.
So yeah, speaking of gear, what of an expo? Was that your first vendor experience?
Yeah. I'm generally not a vendor expo kind of guy. I mean, as you know, even when when I'm racing a lot and doing stuff, like I don't hang around the expo. I'm not the guy that goes up and meets and greets. And back in the day when you could go to an expo and you could get enough samples to last you 2 years. I mean, they would hand it out like candy. Now it's not like that anymore. But I'd go pack it, pick up, grab my stuff, and leave. So yeah, never really a big expo guy. Never really saw the return on investment and a need for it. But being that it was one of our a team race for us, and Chattanooga was a huge event. I mean, I'll have to go back and look and see how many people they actually had start and then finish the race. It was got to be over 3. So it's one of, if not the largest attended 70.3s in North America, probably not even the world. It was a ton of people. But yeah, we set up shop on Friday and had a little booth at the expo here at Chattanooga 70.3, and I thought it was great. It was honestly we're not, we are a lot of things. We are not savvy businessmen with a plan. But we set up shop. We had a bunch of gear and stuff to hand out or to sell rather. But for me, the most enjoyable part was just meeting a lot of new people. We got to see our athletes. We got to meet some people face to face, that listened. We had a couple people bring us goodies. We had a whole Tupperware box of cookies brought to us. Which as the vendor that was next to us, they stopped us after that happened. They said that's our new goal. It's no longer sales. It's no longer catching on and seeing what kind of trends we get and hits in our online marketplace. It's, do we have people bring us cookies? And I was like, yeah, I know. That's pretty much our standard of excellence, is if we have people bring us goodies, and we did. And so
thanks, Adam.
Yeah,
appreciate that.
Yeah, so it was it was great. It was really awesome to meet, and we do this podcast, you and I, twice a week for now probably 5, 6 years now, and obviously 584 podcasts to put out on the interwebs for free. And we've gotten a lot of emails, a lot of texts, and we go to race and meet people. But that, to me, that's the most enjoyable part, is to meet people and to be able to see people face to face that we can connect with, that we've had some kind of an impact in some way, shape, or form. We're not the most widely listened to podcast on the planet for sure. But we have been able to make some kind of an impact. So to me, that was the part that gave me the most joy. It wasn't selling merchandise. It was being able to connect and see people face to face and shake hands and give hugs and kiss babies.
Yeah, we did a lot of that. It was cool, man. I do like that. I got to meet some people from the club that I hadn't met before, and they came in and we hung out a little bit and got to see them out on the course. And that's just it. It takes time, I think, in the sport to build relationships,
For sure.
And mainly the camps that we have been like the solidifiers of friendships and stuff like that. But it starts, I'm glad we did the booth too, because it gave people an opportunity to meet and, see people that they've heard about, and through the, socials.
Through the grapevine. Through the socials.
Hey, I see you posting on there
which
all
both
the
you
time.
and I
nice to meet you.
We're both horrible at the socials, but that's fine. We have a podcast that we do, and that's pretty
Summer
much
was
our.
not happy when she heard I deleted my Instagram.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, so now we're 0
it's
for
all
2.
on me?
We're 0 for 2 on Instagram. Yeah, I don't have anything except for a little bit of Facebook here and there. But no, I thought it was a great weekend. It was a great, I'll tell you, it's one of the best put on races out there. You got a lot of good feedback from a lot of athletes. We'll go over a little bit of the race. I thought the pro race was great. I will say, as humid and as warm as it got Sunday, they skipped the Thursday, Friday, Saturday of the actual heat. Because Friday, Saturday, I sweat more Friday and Saturday standing at our booth and how hot and humid it was than I did all day running around the race course. Oh. And let me also just say this.
You're saying it was easy. They had it easy.
I'm not saying it was easy. Of course, if that had been yesterday, it would have been easy because it was rainy and 70.
Perfect.
I got the wetsuit call wrong, for sure.
Yep. I got it right.
I've been reminded of that multiple times. I just have a simple question though. How in the world is the listed temperature on Thursday evening 76.9? Okay, so not wetsuit legal. Friday and Saturday, the lows were in the mid to low 70s and the highs were in the 90s. We had no rain yet. The temperature dropped 3 degrees.
That's all.
How does that happen? Do we have any
upriver, man? What happens upriver is the question.
I know, but we had no rain.
The cold water flip over to the top.
It was just. It's
we can't understand nature.
A bunch of horseshit is basically what I'm going to.
And neither do weather people.
Yeah, I'm going to just call it. It was a bunch of horseshit.
How many times are we going to fall for the forecast? That's my question.
Yeah,
we do it every single. race.
Who the hell
panic,
knows?
Storming Friday or Saturday night. The race.
It's
going to cancel.
Came in. I looked at as it was storming at Saturday at 9 o'clock here.
Brutal storm.
As it's storming, I looked at the weather. Nothing on the radar.
Yeah,
no rain. I'm like, what? How is this happening? But then again, I was like, did the temperature drop if there were 3 degrees with warmer temps? Who knows? I'm not the guy to ask. But yeah, obviously, they had the pre-sale going on the day before. That was my thing. Convenient how the temperature dropped from 76.9 to 73.9 as soon as the Chattanooga 70.3 pre-sale went online for 2023. Wetsuits are good for business. Let's just call it like it is. And yeah, my only negative for the whole race is just how insanely long it takes them to get people in the water. The last female, or not female, I think she was a female, but the last person to exit the water was in transition at the same time the first pro was in. That's how long. That's how long it took them to get people in the water. But that's also how fast. Of course, we kind of scoped it out in the morning of. The kayakers were not moving a ton. What I think has made this a fair, even we talked a lot last week about how fair the course was. Mm-hmm. What's made it fair is if there is little to no current, and there was a current. There always is. There's some kind of a current. There has to be because it's downstream from the dam. but it wasn't super fast. But what it has done, as long as the flow is, little to no flow, it's equalized the added distance, which is what I saw from people. It was, it's a 1.2 mile swim for most 70.3s, as you know, but it was downstream. So you get a little flow, and they added the added yardage, 0.4, 0.5, whatever you want to call it. The times ended up being, from people I know, people I've competed against in the past, people that we train, the extra mileage and the flow basically canceled each other out. And which is, listen, if you're gonna take away the 100-meter upstream swim that we all had, that in the previous years past, it's now become a little more fair, right? In terms of, if you're gonna add the distance, you get a little flow. The bike course, I'll keep saying this, especially with how they're repaving some of the roads and how it's a fast bike course. It's just a fast bike course. The pro race was great on both sides, had a lot of great performances, but and it got hot, but listen, it's the South in late May. That's what's going to happen. You're going to get some heat and humidity. Everyone continues to complain about hot and insane. It was hot and insane the days before. So it was your average 70.3 or your average Chattanooga 70.3 temps. It wasn't too hot, right? It wasn't overly hot, and it wasn't cool. It was just the standard of what you're going to get when you sign up for this race in late May.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've done this race many times. It's always like that.
It's always like this.
It was. And I agree with you. It is a fast bike course, but it's not like, I think like Muncie is a fast bike course, it has that reputation, obviously, but this one can be sort of like in that realm, but you got to be ready for, there's more hills, and it's definitely tougher, but it can be because of the long downhills and things like that. So you got to be prepared to go fast and be able to climb, so I think that's the difference, right? On Muncie, you can just kind of shred it on a basically flat course, smooth course and everything like that. That's an example, but because I do agree this can be fast, but I think people that think it's fast may not be prepared for the hill parts.
Yeah. And that's
ups and downs.
Right. That's always something that you find with bike courses that can be really, really fast, is that people get caught up in how fast that
like St. George, with the pros.
Right. Yeah. They get caught up with how fast they can go, that they usually, a lot of people, you heard this from some of our athletes, regrettably, and then that chose to overbike and go way above the watt range they were given. And then I heard it a lot on the uphill coming out of transition, was overbiking, and how they were, hamstrings and quads were seized up. And I'm like, listen, you can all blame electrolytes and not enough salt, and, I need a banana and I need some, base salt tabs. Like, you smoked it. You burnt your biscuits, right? That's what happens. When you cramp up, it's because you overdid something. It's not just because you're short on electrolytes. It's because you overdid it. And your muscles are like, hello, seizing, please stop. We're not made for this. So we're going to spasm and tell you to slow it down, because we can't. So what happens when you have these really fast bike courses, people kind of get up to that's, I can PR this bike course, or I can have this super fast time, because the swim was still, again, it was still a quick swim, right? Yes, did the flow make up for the extra distance? Sure, but you're not going to find an easier swim. Yeah, Augusta is like a joke because they just toss you in the water and you can get a 25-minute swim strictly by doing nothing. But it's a straight shot, right? There's no chop, there's no wind. It's not hard to navigate. You just jump in and swim a straight, and how hard can it be? So you still get the ease of it was still wetsuit legal, so you're not using as much energy. You hop on the bike, the bike course in the first few minutes of the roads, or the first few miles rather, are a little bumpy, but then you got like perfect roads. You got plenty of room. I do have to say this before I go any further. I was reminded why, and we told all of our athletes and anyone who listened and anyone at the expo, get in the water immediately. And the as I was watching the traffic jam that was the last buoy, I was reminded of just not getting out of the heat and having your space right when you swim. Is think about the rolling start of the swim, kind of like the interstate. Okay. If you've got slow cars and fast cars and medium pace cars, everyone can pick a lane, right? Everyone can pick, far left, middle lane, far right to pick their own speed, right? It's easy to navigate when people can have enough room to dictate. What happens then, because people can pass, people can drop back, people can get out of the way. What happens is when you toss 1,150 to 210-minute swim, people, they're all going the same pace. You know what you get?
Log jam.
A fucking traffic jam. Okay. Everyone go in the same space that isn't fast enough to move to the left or move to the right. And that's why you saw, in my opinion, the longer it went, the slower the times got, not because just the swimmers, because it got that much more crowded, especially the last 200, 300 meters. It's hard to get space when you've got that many people who aren't moving quickly, right? So just think about that next time you have the opportunity to get in for a swim. Do you want clear space, right? Because if, like I said last week, even if you're worried about getting trampled, like, think about it from the interstate. If the guy is going 80, he's going to get in the left lane. He doesn't want to get behind you, right? And have you move out of the way. He wants to move. But when you've got with so many people in such a condensed, because I would say the 150 to 220 range is probably the most condensed amount of people in terms of like average pace per 100 that you would find in a 70.3. You put all those people in the water in 30 minutes, you're going to get a log jam. People can't get out of the way. They don't have the maneuvering capability or the fitness to pick up speed and do it. So create your own space, get in the water. But going back to what we were talking about on the bike course is, you saw people get in trouble because it is pretty shaded earlier in the day. You saw people maybe get behind on their nutrition. And I heard it a ton just by listening to people running up the riverfront, the hill they did the one time, about hamstrings, and as they were cramping up, they're cramping up this, cramping up that. And I was like, bike for show, run for dough, baby. And that is just one of those, it's still hard, especially when you're caught up in the moment and you're having such a good time. It's hard to think about what's going to happen. And this is as fair, if not challenging, of a run course, because no matter what, no matter how hot the previous day has been or how hot the day was going to be, once it hits 10 o'clock, and it did it this time, once it hit 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock, it's a hot and hard run course. There is little to no area that's actually flat. You're having to do something at some point to navigate, and I would call it rolling, but it's got just enough pinchers that those pinchers are just deep enough and just long enough to where they take pretty good chunks out of your legs. And by the second loop, it's, the second loop at the pedestrian bridge, it's obviously 60% people walking, if not more, 40% people running.
Yeah. And well, let me just say that I'm actually glad I didn't do that race because I would have probably been one of those guys, hammies up the hill on you. And I do think that with that bike course, speaking of pinchers, there's a lot of, rollers out there. And, to me, cooking the bike is basically, for your own, skill level or fitness level, you're pushing maybe like a gear too high, or, like a gear too big for your legs going into some of those rollers. Because it is a temptingly fast bike course, but if you're really not, and again, it's sort of this early season race thing that we talk about, the people haven't had the chance to ride outside a lot, blah, blah, blah. And you get caught in that thing, right? So there's just a lot of elements that are fine. It's like burning biscuits is such a fine line, man, because I think you got to kind of brown them out there when you're racing. But if you're not used to browning them and you leave them in the oven too long and you're out there too long, then they become burnt, right? So that's that. I try to talk about, sort of, you can't tell me. I mean, those pros out there going 28, 29 miles an hour for the whole thing aren't saucing those biscuits a little bit.
Dude.
You know what I mean? And then they come out on a run and they're just going through pain, man. So this is what I always try to say is like, all right, you want to be up there in the top? You got to feel that, man. You can't just ride under your, in your, strolling comfort endurance zone on a bike and expect to be in the top 10 or something like that. You got to go after a little bit and understand and also be capable of dealing with that a little bit.
Yeah. And that's why to me, that's such a great point. Like why this 70.3 distance to me is so hard in its own right to nail, because you can race it start to finish. Right. And Ironman to me is one of those where 95% of the people that are going to do it zone 1, zone 2 the whole day. Right. It's mental, and it's just about, and it's a long aerobic, long day, right? Moderate effort. 70.3 racing. I mean, a lot of people, especially obviously the pros and elite level amateurs, both male and female, it is a race from the gun. And like you said, they're going to burn their biscuits, right? But for them, it's more like, all right, I got I'm gonna put this stuff in the oven at 425, but I only need to put it in there for 3.5 hours, right? So they're gonna burn and get toasted at some point. Hopefully, it's not to the 4. I mean, the guy who won was way under 4 hours, like 3:40. I think he was like 3:30, 3:39. It's like what? So like he's got his biscuits in the oven for 3:30, but it's on like 4:50. Like you might be a person who might have your biscuits in the oven for 6 hours at 300, right? Totally different. But what happens is. And this is, I'm gonna use a lot of oven and biscuit analogies. Like you ever you're super hungry and you got something and you look at the recipe and it's like, all right, 425 for 30 minutes. You're like, fuck it. 500 for 15. It'll be fine. Right? You shove it in there. You're hungry. You want to eat, or the oven isn't to temperature yet. You know, you're like, it says 12 minutes. It's supposed to get to 425. I'm going to put it in there in the preheat and just leave it in there. And it never, ever cooks the same. Right? It's either overdone or the outside's burnt and the insides are still cold. It never does it. But that's what we do as athletes. Sometimes we get so caught up in what you were saying about the rollers on the bike course. There are a lot of false flats on that course. Sure. And so if you're getting caught up at staring at the speed, right, and you're not sure if you're actually on an incline or not, what you more than likely did was you up the power a little bit too much. You up the heart rate a little bit too much because you're just like, well, I'm on a flight. Why am I going slower? I don't want to go, below 20. I'm cruising at 20. I want to go up. So what you do is you cranked it up, right? And you end up burning a little bit of a biscuit. You crank it up a few degrees cooler. And what happens is you could perfectly pace it for a 5-hour finish, at 400 degrees. But what happened is around the 4-hour mark, you decided to crank it up to 500, shove your ass on the broiler. And the next thing that happens, you're cooked. You're cooked. There's nothing you can do. And that's what you see all the time. Yes, you said it. Everyone, if you really race it and empty the tank, you're going to burn your biscuit. You're going to do that. It's to me, 70.3s you race. And to me, the open marathon is like the hardest. To me, it's like one of, if not the hardest endurance events to nail, because there is no point within the race, especially if you're trying to race and extract every single ounce of performance out of your body. Obviously, you need to have a certain level of ability and speed to be able to do that and have that confidence, right? That's why it's so challenging, but also so kind of hard to crack, is like, you're going to have to burn them at some point, but it's just when, right? At Ironman, it's kind of a slow, the Ironman is the crock pot, right? It's like, I'm going to set it in here for 13 hours. I don't need to check on it. I just need to be able to know I'm going to lift the lid off of it and do it. But 70.3 in the marathon specifically, you're racing from mile 1. Right? Like you're racing from in Ironman. We always tell people, you're racing start till mile 80 of the bike, or if you're smart, the half marathon, half marathon point. You've already been doing it for 9 hours, right? But in a 70.3, you're swimming steady and hard. You're biking zone 3, which is not comfortable. It's just that annoyingly uncomfortable. But man, I can hold this for a long time, which sucks because I know I can hold it. You better stay focused. And then you're running as hard as you can for however long it's going to take. But that's also, to me, why it's such an awesome distance for people to continue to try and work on and get faster at. Because the faster you are at 70.3 is the faster you are at fulls. But people want to jump, all and just stay in fulls. I'm like, listen, cracking the code at the 70.3 distance and learning how to race it and really race it and push yourself for 4.5, 5.5 hours, whatever it is your ability is to race and feel like you're on that rivet of, all right, I think I could explode here. I'm doing fine, at 400 degrees. I know if I went to 410, I'd be done, right? I'd be toast. And you learn so much because the range of intensity is so high that you have to learn like kind of your own warning signs, right? Like we had an athlete, Kevin Flanagan, who was on the podium for the first time and PR'd. And he told me after, he said, I've always looked at my heart rate when I ran. Always. I've always looked at heart rate and pace because I like to just know. Right. And he said, I just turned it off and I just ran. Mm-hmm. And all I kept up was mileage, and I ran by feel and what I had. And I was like, that's because in 70.3, you either got it or you don't, right? There's nothing your watch is going to tell you that you don't already intrinsically, honestly know if you're being objective. either got it or you don't, right? You know, like, I heard a coach yelling out, all you got to do is hold 7-minute miles and you're going to catch. I'm like, dude, I mean, if she can, she can. If she can't, she can't. There's literally nothing you're going to do by yelling at us going to make her more likely to catch this person or not. You either got it or you don't. And you have to learn what it feels like to have it. And then you also need to learn what it feels like to not have it, and how to kind of, mitigate and triage how you're feeling and elongate things a little bit before you really, crack the cord, or if you can. But it's a really, really hard distance to crack from a quote unquote speed standpoint.
That's interesting. I was talking to somebody about this, and they were asking me about what I'm going to do next. And I keep leaning towards a full, because I feel like I've, at least cracked the 70.3 code a little bit better than I have the full. And it feels like more of a mystery to me. And there's, just, more deep diving and opportunity for me to kind of, I don't know. It's just so intriguing, but I totally agree with you. And you look at 70.3s, like mastering that or really getting good at that, how much that helps you in the full. It really does. I mean, because you're able to ride hard and understand that pain. But I was looking at, this race, a lot of people out there in the course, a lot of bikes, and if you're like you're saying, if you got out with that middle of the pack swim when thousands of people got out, then all of a sudden you got thousands of bikes on the road, and then you're trying to race, and you're trying to navigate, people that are kind of looking at the countryside or dropping bottles or whatever the case may be. You really have, it's one thing to kind of push that zone 3 and feel your biscuits toasting a little bit, but also you got to be able to, get your fuel. Yep. There's all these elements that kind of come into play. Like a lot of people can't really ride fast and drink or hit the aid stations correctly, or they may forget about cooling down, like I think a lot of times, burnt biscuits do get kind of confused too with, because, if you're talking about core temp and stuff like that, I burned my biscuits on it, but you're just overheated. It's maybe you didn't cool right, or you didn't fuel right, all these kind of things. And then you're like, I just burned my biscuits. No, you didn't. You probably didn't. You're just out there hot, going too slow, and not getting enough in you to be prepared for that. That's why I'm always like, every single email, I don't care, even if it's a cold race, I'm always like, ice and water every 8 seconds.
Every time.
Get cold on the bike. Yeah. Because if you can get off that bike shivering, you're going to be in a better spot running.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, that's the way I look at it.
He said it's like, the point isn't to try to get cold once you've been hot, right? Yeah. The point is to never get that hot, right?
Correct.
And
I think that's when people have those great runs. Like obviously you had a couple guys, we had several people run really well. And a lot of times I think it really comes down to that, People continuously complain about improper fueling. And while that's probably the case for a lot of athletes, because I do think that fueling is again one of the harder things to get right, to especially right, like going back to intensity. Ironman, yeah, you have to fuel right, but it's also a lot easier to fuel when you're going zone 2, right? You're burning a lot of fat, you should be, and you can take in, it's easier to take in a lot of calories because, the easier you're going, the easier it is taking calories, right? Yeah. You can't, you see people trying to run a 5K, like most people don't even drink. Like they just go balls out from, the whole, because you can't consume anything because you're breathing so heavily. Same thing goes. The harder you're working, the harder it is to consume and digest calories, because it takes energy to consume and digest calories. What happens so many times, in especially in 70.3s and obviously in fulls and Olympics and sprints, is that it's not that your fueling plan was wrong. A lot of times it's your pacing was too high to accommodate the fueling plan that you had. Right. And you can't consume them all. And then you end up paying the price later. Or like you said about staying cool. Oh man, I'm wearing a wetsuit still. Like you're probably, core temp's probably 10 degrees higher when you get out of the water. Heart rate's probably 15 beats higher than it would if you're not wearing a wetsuit. And then you hop on the bike and you're like, it's shaded. The roads are nice. I'm flying. You got all this wind. You probably didn't
And this is it's so true for in the full here too. In a lot of races, it's like the bike can feel, because of the shade and how many trees there are at the in the good, very few turns, right? So you're not having to stop and then feel it like sweating. The hills aren't super long where all the wind stops, right? And you're like baking. Like looking back at some of the St. George files, there were long extended periods of time they were climbing up these huge climbs, and it was 92 degrees outside. They had a tailwind, right? And they're getting no wind in front because they're going so slow because they're going up at 8% grade. Like you're frying. And so on a course like that, you can get caught up like, I feel kind of cool, right? It's not bad. Or it's your first visit to altitude and you're like, I'm not sweating. I don't need anything. And you're like, oh my God, I lost 5 pounds and I even know it. It happens so often. People don't stick to their fueling plan because they think they feel better than they should. And
100%.
then just like, I feel cool. Well, if you have to stop to cool yourself down, it's too late, because once you get hot, there's honestly no way to get cool enough to where it's going to really benefit you, because in order to do that, you have to walk. And then you're just walking in 85-degree heat and humidity. It's not like your body's core temp is going to really, go down that much where you're going to see this huge... You're not going to be able to rally, right? You'll be able to finish, you'll be able to start running instead of walking, but you're never going to be able to rally to a point to where you're going to be able to run faster for a longer period of time.
Yeah. As you were talking about that, I was really thinking about this, because you get out of the water, you probably feel like you're good. You got a lot of shade going on. You got some, although I heard the wind was kind of in the face on the way out, but who knows? I don't know how windy it was, but probably. But on the way out, you probably feel like, I feel good. And then you get to the loop, and then I think it is shaded out there, right? I can't remember. I feel like it is in the morning. And then you get up to the top of Mount St. Andrews. And then you're cooking, right? So maybe you feel good through that. And then all of a sudden you're on that downhill, that screamer. You're on the backside. It's kind of cool over there a little bit maybe. And you're flying. And then I know I can almost... I'm just very curious how many people this happened to. Maybe they didn't fuel enough or cool enough all the way through that situation. And then they get to that stretch that before you get to Chickamauga, the city, and you always think like, oh, it's right up there. But no, it's like 8 miles away or whatever. Like that stretch right there, because there's a couple little hills in there, I think. And it's that long 8 miles or whatever that's not super fast anymore, but it's going into the city. That's probably when people started going, man, it's hot out, and they were already kind of behind the 8 ball. And then you kind of try to, it's really difficult to continue to fuel on those last, 5 to 10 miles. Cause you're coming in, you're like ready to go, and you're not but like my thing always has been forcing things. And one of those things is on that first aid station, even if I feel good and I feel cool, I always take that ice water and just douse myself. And it's freezing. It actually feels like, holy shit, I'm cold now. But that's the point. And then on the way in, it's like, I'm really kind of cognizant of trying to keep up with my fuel and my, even though you're kind of in probably a draft pack coming in and you're just like, let's get the hell off this bike. And the next thing you know, that analogy of the car driving 9 hours and then stopping and how hot that hood is because there's no more circulation. And now your core is already overheated. And you're trying to get it down going up a hill on a run. And again, like going back to, I know we're hammering this home. We've done it a ton. And it's not because we hate indoor trainer riding. Indoor training is essential for all athletes. I mean, I do it a ton. Our athletes do it a ton. But nailing your nutrition and fueling strategy inside is not the same as nailing it outside. It takes you're going to be hotter outside than you will inside. It's going to take and require significantly more energy to handle your bike outside in those conditions, more than likely at a higher and heavier pace after you've already swam 1.2. Okay. And then you combine that with, it is harder to consume calories while biking, right? You're not biking inside, you're pedaling in place. Okay. You're not having to navigate and refill and take in, the straws you use on your X-Lab Torpedo or whatever kind of hydration system. Those straws restrict how much you get in versus like I was on the Watt bike this morning doing workout. There are a lot of times I would just sit up, no hands, and I'd take my, my little 16 ounce, crushing iron bottle, and I'd squeeze like 3 huge gulps down. You can't do that on a bike, right? You can't do that while you're outside riding a ton. You got to put the bottle down. You got to make sure you're doing things. You got to navigate. So people consistently don't get in
enough because what they thought was enough inside in their cooler, calm environment where it's easier to take huge gulps of whatever it is. Now they go to this brand new, aero hydration setup, and then where you don't have any idea for a lot of them how much you've actually consumed. And they're like, yeah, I think I feel pretty well. Then I got back to my bike after the day was over and I was a bottle and a half short. While that might not sound like a lot, that's a ton of fluid and hydration and calories to leave in there. You're so behind. You are so, and again, going back to once you get really, really hot, you can't kind of get it back. Same thing goes for once you have underfueled by that much. The only thing that you can do to help mitigate the ultimate loss you're probably going to have on the run is to slow down your goal pace or effort significantly. Again, going back to, higher effort equals harder to take in calories. Well, if you get weight, and this is especially true for fulls, right? And if you find yourself getting behind on calories, and even at 70.3 on the bike, in order to get in more calories, you have to slow down, slower effort, lower heart rate, less power, allows your body the chance to consume and collect more calories, absorb them, digest them, and that way you can actually feel better. But what most people aren't willing to do is ever slow down, right? Because once the cannon goes off, most people's objective and intelligent thinking goes out the window. It is just like you just go from the best athletes out there know their own kind of, warning signs because they raced a ton, which again, going back to the last 3 years, a lot of people just haven't raced enough. Just flat out haven't raced enough. You learn the most about yourself and what's going right and what's going wrong in your decision making when you race. Everyone can pace well and accurately when it's a training day, when it's just practice, right? But when the lights come on, you hop in the water, there's 3,000 people out there, you got expectations, right? You want to race people, you want to impress people, you want to go for it. Good decision making goes out the effing window. And in long course racing, it all comes down to making all the small right decisions as many times as possible in a row without making a stupid one. And if you can do that, you're going to have a great day. But most people will ruin their day by making really, really poor decisions on the bike.
Yeah.
And then they blame it on the run.
Yeah. I agree, man. I was talking to Emily about this, but back in the day when we started and when I knew I was training a lot harder back then. You know what I mean? And the reality was that we would go out to Natchez Trace and do bike rides that were not screw around rides.
No, we didn't speak.
I don't think we
ever spoke.
We ever spoke, but we would just go after it. A lot of pace line maybe, but it was always kind of on. There was 4 or 5 hour rides, hard ones, multiple times. Mm-hmm. That's I question how many people even ride a ride similar to what they did Sunday before this,
people noodle.
And then expect it, expect to be able to run off of that. Or it's just, I don't know. For a half, I think you almost got to, really do a simulated ride here and there, where you're going to go out and kind of hammer it for 3 hours. And
yeah. One of the things that most athletes don't do near enough of, and I'll compare the long ride to most people's open water swim. They don't go and open water swim to actually do much work.
Right.
They just noodle around and float with their buds, right?
Mm-hmm.
They got their swim cap, they got your goggles, we throw on our safety float, we got our wetsuit, and then we'll swim about 500, we'll stop, tread water, look around for a little bit, go swim again, stop. That feels about right. After 1,000, right? That's not, you're not working out. You're not getting in an open water workout. You're just swimming in a lake recreationally. And that is also how so many people look at their long rides and 70.3s and especially fulls, right? They go with their group, and they do a 6-hour ride, where ride time is 5 hours, but elapsed time is 7.5, right? Because they stop 7 times, right, to refuel and chat, and they got to wait on so-and-so who got a flat tire, or they're drafting the entire time, right? So their heart rate's lower, but they're going faster, and they're probably going by mileage, so they're probably working 45 minutes less than they would a normal race. Like, more athletes should do significantly harder, higher intensity work later on in rides. For 70.3s and fulls, we do a ton of high intensity, really, really hard rides, not just because it's a great stimulus, right? And elicits a really good adaptation for a lot of athletes, whether it's early efforts or late efforts, but it also requires them to adjust from a fueling standpoint, right? And a pacing standpoint, because it's the surges are like, you never ride steady, right? Like, in race, you go out and you hammer it. Sometimes you have to hammer it to get around people. And when you don't include that in your training, and then you expect for things to go perfectly on race day, it's just misguided, and you're just not being thoughtful enough with your training and preparation to think, oh, well, I can just go, or I'm going to go replace my 4-hour ride with really hard efforts with a 4-hour cruise gravel bike ride. That's the same, right? No, it's not. Like, yeah, you're getting good time in, but if you're in a race specific phase, you have to work at these, because on a race, you're working. And so don't tell me you nailed your nutrition on your group ride where you're soft pedaling, for minutes on end. You're going like, you're not, true, like, man. You're never soft pedaling. Like, if you really, and that's just, people treat training and racing so differently when it comes to the mindset and the preparation, the demands of the day, because it's a lot to think about. It's a lot but you have to have those long, hard rides. It's good to get your heart rate, I am not allowed to have my heart rate go above my moth zone in running, or I must keep it zone 2 heart rate below. I'm like, why? Well, I'm like, then let me know how that goes on race day when you don't do that and you come out of the water and your heart rate's 15 beats higher. When I swim a 70.3, I get out of the water, my heart rate's 170. It takes me at least 10 miles for it to get even into the 150s. I don't give a shit. You have a watts, you stick with the watts, but you have to train like that and also practice the fueling and the demands of being able to take it in and train your gut to do that. But there's so much overlap in how athletes prepare and then how athletes expect to perform on race day. Mm-hmm. And it's not apples to apples. You have to put in that specific type of work. And again, so like those, harder long swims. And if you're going to open water, make yourself uncomfortable, when you do it, like we do at camp, we make people very uncomfortable. And then on the bike, do hard efforts early. Learn how to gather yourself, right? Learn how to, some of the long rides we do, I have people do threshold the first 30 minutes. They're like, what? And then they get themselves good and they gather themselves. They're able to pace things appropriately, and then add intensity to your long rides, and then negative split some of your long runs. Like, those are some things, like easy things you can do if you're a self-coached athlete to be much better prepared at long course racing than just the typical kind of noodling around people do when they go, 6-hour ride, move time 4:20.
Right. Or you have to be a gamer.
No, don't get me started on gamers.
No, we were talking about that a little bit. Like, yep. Yeah, you can. A lot of people train differently. I've got some athletes that kind of really, don't frankly train super hard, but they show up on race day, and I'm sure within their training they experiment and go hard. You know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. It could be an easy ride, but like I've had very few quote unquote super easy rides, like that were just chill. I can't deal with them. Yep. Mentally. So I have to find hills or whatever and go after them. But if you're going to, I think within the program, you have to create an experience that's going to, mirror a race. Mm-hmm. You have to understand what that is. And then sometimes you just get people to show up at a race and they just go into the hurt locker and they love it and they just push through it because they understand it and they know it. So, but that doesn't mean they maybe trained all these hard threshold things or whatever. They can just turn it up. And to me, I said to you one time, man, that's like really, this stuff is really, really, really mental. How deep can you go? How much can you adjust? Like, like you're saying, can you regroup after a threshold? Like, Mount St. Andrews, can you get your shit back together if that was hard for mm-hmm. you? And then just get back in the ball game while you're breathing hard and then slowly bring it down, those types of things. And I think we just, people need to experience that. And we can talk about gamers next time if you want, because we're running out of time.
It is. And it's if you don't, I mean, some people know, I think intrinsically if they're a gamer or not. And I do think that being a gamer does come down to confidence and confidence from preparation, right? A lot of people, they do enough work to where, they, legit work to where they know that they can make it happen. And then you have some people that are just, and I think that's why it's also relative, right? In terms of, everyone has like we are unable.
Experience, man.
Right, it is, and you have to experience. And every time you race, if you decide to put yourself out there and just see what happens and really, really go for it, some people are way too afraid, especially in 70.3s. That maybe not their biggest race. They haven't raced, and like, listen, if you haven't raced a lot in the last 3 years, like most people, I haven't. In order to really, really succeed, you gotta put yourself out there. You gotta be willing to go for broke. And if you burn your biscuits 10 miles early, you burn your biscuit 10 miles early. But the next time you race, you'll learn some from it, and you might just burn them right when you cross the finish line, right? But you can't do that without putting it. But then what happens is most people get, race fright. And one doesn't go well. They're like, I got more time, so I probably won't, probably gonna race again next year. I'm like, well, how are you gonna, like, training gives us fitness and you can improve, but improving in training is not the same as improving when you race. And that is a skill and an experience, because it's 100% totally different than, race day is so dramatically different than practice and training. It's just different. All of it's different. And so to think that it's not is naive and irresponsible for yourself if you're trying to really kind of figure it out. So race more, right? You don't do the same distance, but you'll hop in 5Ks, 10Ks, sprints, Olympics, burn it. Like, just burn it down and see what happens and really figure out where your threshold of pain is. Because for most people, it's a lot higher than they think. They just haven't gotten there yet because they're afraid of what'll happen when they get there. Like, oh my God, I bonked today. Who cares? Get back. Now you learn. Now you can maybe stretch it, right? 10 minutes more the next time and see how close you get, right? Or move the needle a bit more on the bike and see how long you can hold on to it on the run. Like that. That's why the sport is, yes, it's frustrating and confusing and hard, but it's also why it's so great. It's because you legit always feel like, which is the hardest part of being a coach, is you always feel like because what happens is you always learn something. So when you learn something, you automatically feel like, I can do better next time, right? So you always, because that's how we learn, right? We make mistakes. We go too early. We don't feel enough. We don't do this enough. We wore a wetsuit, or we shouldn't have, or we didn't wear one, we should have, or, went too early for it in the bike, or, I went by this and I shouldn't have. It's like that those mistakes, right? And those lessons that we learn only when we race is how we have that feeling of, oh, well, there is more room. Like I said, I didn't have there's only one perfect race that you're ever going to have. The rest of them are just, you race and you learn. And that's why it's so great. It's because you really feel like you're never done, right? Because there's always some part of your craft and your pacing and your effort and your execution or your training that can always use work, right? And that's why, again, like, that's why coaching is so great, because it's all, no one's ever done. It's also, the hardest part, because no one's ever satisfied. They're like, so I kind of got it now, but now I think I can do this. And you're like, yeah, here we go again. You're right back to work. Yeah.
That, and when you're out there training and you've got 2 routes home, take the hill.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know what I mean? I mean, I agree with you. Racing is so much, but you can prepare a little better by doing harder shit. My thing last year for the full in Chattanooga, not that I had a great race, but I would run from here and I go over to that Battery Hill where you guys all just, ran up twice. I'd do repeats on that thing, like 20 of them, which is, but like not super hard. It would have been my long run would include like repeats of Battery or whatever. And then I get back on the Greenway and cruise, because one of the things for me has always been doing a lot of hills and getting that grinder and then figuring out the flats, because like, how do you run on the flat when it's smoother and it should be faster? How do you readjust that? And then I come back, do a couple hill repeats, and then run home. But those are the types of things that, when I send athletes out on runs and stuff, that I'm not there. You have to make your own little challenges out there. And I think that those are huge to all the time incorporate. Maybe one, not for the hell of it, let's just do a hill. That's just experience right there, Anyway, I guess we can wrap this up.
And you only get experience by experiencing things.
Yeah.
Get out and do it.
Was this a good chat recap, or should we come back with part 2?
Do what?
Do we cover
Nah,
Chat?
we covered it all. Moving on the rest of the year. Chat said Chat got 3 podcasts. But I hope you enjoyed them. We love you all. And again, we appreciate seeing everybody, the last week here. And we look forward to seeing a lot of you, the remainder of the year at some other races. So as always, we appreciate you. If you want to know more about what we do or interested in things that you've heard about before, but are just now kind of needing, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. And as always, if you need anything from Mike, he's available, CrushingIron@gmail.com. And if you need anything from me, you can get hold of me at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right. And I just want to acknowledge a couple things.
Go for it.
A couple people.
We doing compliments here?
Well, not, yeah. I mean, I just want to give a little thing out to the BBMC crew out there. There was a lot of them, man. We went up to Madison a couple of years ago and had a lot of people up there in their home turf, and they came down here and kind of showed out here. So I just think that's cool. And then I
see you in September.
Met the yeah, we'll be up there. We'll be back.
See you in September.
It's not over. This is not over. Met the founder of the Atlanta Tri Club. Really nice guy. He's a fan of the podcast, and I just think that's cool. We like to spread it around.
You're such a politician.
Well, I mean, yeah, I do.
And I'd like to thank
but that was nice.
Chamber
he came
of
up and
Commerce
grabbed me.
from.
We'd like to thank our sponsors.
You're so likable. It's disgusting.
Yeah. Sometimes, man, some people think I'm a dick, though.
Yeah, but a lot of people think I'm a dick, and that's okay.
Yeah. I'm just a dick in person sometimes.
But not all the time. That's what's most important.
I walked through that massage tent. I got to get this out because this guy bugged me.
Oh, boy. I was
trying to get to the port because the Ironman
muffle your ears, people.
One exit. They file everybody through their store. There's nowhere to get out of the expo. I guess smart business move, but
it's a great business move.
It's a great business move. I don't know. People walking through with bikes. It's really weird. I mean, either they want your shit or they don't. You don't have to force it down their throat.
Right, go to the massage tent.
I think give them some room and let them shop. Like a trendy boutique.
There you go.
I'm walking through. I tried to get out through the back because there's a little fence split back there.
I used that fence split.
Yeah, I walked through the massage tent and there's like a security guard or something back there. I walked by him. I waved and he goes, "Hey," and then I'm looking for that split. I couldn't see it, so I was kind of looking around. He turns around, sitting down, and goes, "Can I help you, sir?" I was like, "What do you mean? I'm just trying to go to the bathroom. I'm a vendor."
You pulled the vendor card.
Vendor card.
I'm never getting invited back.
Well, you got to go out and around. I go, "All right, dude. Why do you got to, treat me like an asshole?" You want to see me treat you like an asshole? I can do that too. I go, "All right, cool. Chill out."
Look at you. You're so confrontational.
I was just like, I don't know why people are that way. "Can I help you, sir?" That's just he wasn't even in a uniform or anything. I was like,
"Can I help you?"
When people say, "Can I help you, sir?" that drives me crazy.
It doesn't drive me as crazy as when people say "on your left" on the greenway when you're running.
When they scream it?
Yeah.
On your left. When I'm in a zone, I'm like running in a nice meditational zone right on the right edge.
Just use the bell.
And there's somebody on the bike and they get right in my ear. "On your left." And it like startles me into the grass a little bit. Yeah, that one gets me. Next time, the things that irritate Mike. Oof. But I'm really reading a lot of Zen now, so that I'm letting all that shit
go. Clean your oatmeal bowl.
I'm gonna go clean it.
All right, see you.
See you.